About a quarter of a century ago, I was the judge, jury, and executioner on every New Age device that came through Southern California. That included free energy motors, healing devices, you name it. And in the course of a good year, we had examined maybe 125 devices, and about 99.9% of them were either placebo, garbage, or wishful thinking, hallucination. But once in a long while, we would come across something that was exceptional. And in 1962, it was the Lakowski multiple wave oscillator. Now, I am going to say I reserve the right to change my mind about anything I'm telling you. But what we did is we built a very small device, small being the size of an attaché case, that had the Lakowski antennas driven by a Tesla coil. Many of these had wound up in the hands of veterinarians. We published the schematics, and the veterinarians were curing cancer in animals that other vets would put to sleep. So word would get around, and the veterinarians would bring sick animals to the guy that had it, and they got well. Well, at the time, what we assumed was that we were simply shock exciting a number of dipoles. Think of some big brandy glasses. Bong, 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 bong. And when you drove these with enough of a spark so that the spark would drive all of these concentrically down to the center, each of these would emit a particular frequency depending on the physical size of the dipole. The heterodynes of these, the sums and differences of all of these put together, would put out sort of an RF white noise. Well, when we finally looked at the spectrum of this on a huge Hewlett-Packard gigahertz spectrum analyzer, we found a lot of unexpected harmonics way up in the gigahertz range that we later found were caused by the arc itself. Let's say that the end of this screwdriver is showing these sparks that you could draw off the secondary of a Tesla coil. Obviously, when this was at zero, there was nothing here. But if we looked at it with a very high-speed camera, and the spark would go out to about 4.5 inches and then collapse, of course your eye can't see this because of persistence of vision, what we had was an antenna of 0 dimensions at this point, micromillimeter dimensions until it got out to about 4.5 inches and then collapsed. So part of this energy was coming from this ionized air. You know, when the air is ionized, you have practically a dead and then collapsed. So part of this energy was coming from this ionized air. You know, when the air is ionized, you have practically a dead short between here and here. A tremendous amount of energy can be handled by this ionized or short-circuited path of air. So what we had not taken into account in the original thinking about this device was that we had, besides the rather broad spectra of each of these dipoles, which is shock excited, we had another frequency modulated signal on top of this. At the time, we had simply assumed that since you were in this direction to the antenna, you were absorbing an H vector. We knew that the E vector, which radiates from the ends because of skin effect, would not penetrate the biosystem. It would run around the surface, which is why you can stand in the field of a Tesla coil and light a light bulb in your hand and not be electrocuted. We were getting really stunning results. The animals would respond to this much more rapidly than the human beings. My vice president many years ago in Beck Tech was the astronaut Gordon Cooper. We loaned it to him. He had a 15-year-old police dog that had been part of the family forever. Dog was dragging itself around. Its hind legs weren't working. After 2 days, the dog was up, frisking around, running around the swimming pool. So Gordon would take this box wherever he went, to Washington, Houston, NASA. He was getting people out of wheelchairs. But we're not supposed to talk about this, and it took a long time to get that thing back from him a few years ago when we went our separate ways.